Hello? Anything? If I can't do it, I can just project. I'm very good at that.
You set that one down.
Oh, that one's definitely not on. Nah. Damn. Wow, what a turnout. If it gets to 35, I'm just gonna start.
Sing to us.
Wait, say something else.
Sing? What should I sing?
No, yeah.
Oh, well now we don't get to sing. Oh, no. Maybe at the end. Okay, hi everyone, and welcome to When Cartoons Call Out Their Audience. Is that one working? Okay. Is that gonna reach over here? How's that? Is that any better? Okay. Thank you all so much for joining me today, and I hope you have had a wonderful and only slightly overstimulating MomoCon this year. So, for those that don't know who I am, my name is Jake, and I run a YouTube channel called Jake's Mind Palace, formerly known as The Gladding Gladiator. I was thinking about getting some business cards to put under your seat to help this rebrand, but then I remembered I don't have any money. So, what I do on my channel is I talk about cartoons on the internet, and occasionally the Muppets. The main thing I focus on is revisiting nostalgic media, often through a queer and neurodivergent lens. And outside of YouTube, I'm also an actor, singer, a community events organizer, and all in all, I'm told, a pretty great guy.
Yes.
So, some of the various escapades that I have gotten up to on my channel include spending a year treating the preschool show Bear in the Big Blue House as my life coach, making a semi-documentary about the history of Aardman's, Wallace and Gromit to commemorate me moving out of the town that I'd lived in for the past 6 years, which was where the series was set. And more recently, I did a video debunking many of the myths surrounding the production of the Disney film Chicken Little, and also illustrating why, in many ways, it is accidentally a really strong trans allegory. Every year, I also make recap videos of MomoCon, which I'm told by my friends are the best things I make, so
I cry every time.
Why am I talking about this? In the nearly 6 years that I've been doing YouTube, there has always been one topic I wanted to cover because it absolutely fascinates me. However, I have never been able to crack it due to struggling to find a compelling angle that would warrant the existence of such a project. So, we're doing it live! We are here to examine a range of cartoon episodes from the previous 30 years that serve as a response to their audience, so that we can better understand how the relationship between fans and creators was permanently altered via the rise in social media. Because it has drastically changed. I mean, back then, if a creator or a writer wanted to learn how people saw their work, they had to actively seek it out by going on online message boards or someone's personalized website. Now, if you find a new episode of SpongeBob mid, you can tell them directly. These episodes will all vary in terms of how directly they call out their fandoms, with some being ultra-specific, while others are more about exploring the idea of fandom in general. Because if we don't start with the more tepid stuff, then the more direct call-outs are not going to leave much of an impact. Meaning, we'll be needing some way to organize all these episodes, so I made a scale. And I was really thinking about what would be a great name for this scale. And then I ran out of time.
Maybe a meta scale?
Oh. That's good. Why aren't you up here? The very first episode that I want to talk about is from the series Big Hero 6, the series. So it is an episode titled Fan Friction, which aired on August 18th, 2018, written by Jenny Jaffe and directed by Ben Juono. Has anyone seen Big Hero 6, the series? Yeah, if you haven't, watch the first 2 seasons, don't watch the third. Yes, the last season, they change it to 11-minute episodes, and there's no story at all. It's just hijinks. In this story, Kami is Hero's bully at the Institute of Technology, but has a crush on his superhero identity to a point where she has begun writing self-insert Big Hero 6 fanfiction, creating her own interpretation of the team. Not to go on another tangent, but I really do not like Kami in Season 1. She is so obnoxious and cruel the entire time, and then she plays this massive role in the first arc of Season 2, and the moment she finally starts getting some decent character development and becomes semi-likeable, they write her out of the show. While everyone else is excited and even flattered that someone is writing stories about them, Hiro is horrified for fairly understandable reasons.
Are you familiar with the phrase copyright infringement? Because my lawyer here is prepared to take action. Legal action.
I'm just not sure anyone would buy Baymax as a lawyer.
Say your line. I object.
So, because of how popular Kami's story is, the villains actually believe that she is Hiro's girlfriend and take her hostage, as the team now have to rescue her. However, it's all a trap as they must escape before the building and the island they're on is demolished. So they all escape at the last second, utilizing ideas from Kami's story, as while Hiro is still not a fan of her writing, he learns to live with it, because he sees how happy it makes her and how important it is to others. But the real legacy of this episode is that the scenes that depict the fanfiction are done in a chibi style. And this led directly into Disney's Chibi Tiny Tales. So you have Big Hero 6 the series to thank if you've ever seen those, or curse under your breath if you don't like them.
They keep the studio alive.
They're keeping many things alive. So this episode really takes a surprisingly positive view of fanfiction and how beneficial it can be. At one point, Baymax even points out that this type of creative expression can be a positive way to connect with people. Something evident throughout the entire episode, as we see plenty of examples of the background characters bonding and forming new relationships by discussing this story. While the characters themselves are not creators in a traditional sense, it is still nice to see them engage with and endorse these fan works, because, there was a time when that really wasn't something you would expect. However, it is very fixated on the general concept of fandom rather than looking at how Big Hero 6 specifically interacts with its audience, because the show hadn't even premiered when this episode was being written. It also tries to address the debate surrounding real person fanfiction, which is a whole other can of worms. Let's move on to a series with a little bit more to say, The Simpsons Season 8 episode, The Itchy and Scratchy and Poochie Show, which aired on February 9th, 1997, was written by David X. Cohen and directed by Stephen Dean Moore. And note, this will not be the only Simps episode featured in this presentation. I know it's a famous episode, I'm sure we've all seen it, and there's absolutely no need for me to recap the entire plot. But we do have an hour to kill, so Itchy and Scratchy are in a rating slump, thus the executives decide to add a new character in the form of the edgy and in-your-face Poochie. With encouragement from his kids, Homer ends up going to the audition and landing the gig voicing the dog. However, this new addition ruins the show, as Poochie's radicalness leaves no room for the typical cartoon violence. They very famously never make it to the fireworks factory. So the character is killed off despite Homer's efforts to prevent this. However, besides that one iconic scene pictured here with, a clip I'm sure many of us have used if we do YouTube at one point or other, this is more so an expose on out-of-touch executives and the poor talented creatives who have to bend to their will. It's also the first appearance of Lindsay Naegle, proto-Lindsay Naegle in the series, and immediately she makes an impression by telling this poor artist to rastify him by 10%. That is not to say there isn't some pointed commentary about the entitlement of fans in certain cases. The one scene after the first Poochie episode airs, where Bart goes to talk to Comic Book Guy, and it's where the line, worst episode ever, comes from. However, Bart rebuttals with,
What? They've given you thousands of hours of entertainment for free. What could they possibly owe you? I mean, if anything, you owe them.
Worst episode ever.
But while this is certainly a meta episode, its only true representation of the Simpsons fandom at the time was it being aware that many people already believed the series had run its course. In Season 8. In fact, there is one line in this episode that comes across as almost prophetic in how well it has aged in terms of public perception regarding the series. And that is during the focus group test where Lisa goes up to Roger Myers Jr. and says,
The thing is, there's not really anything wrong with the Itchy and Scratchy show. It's as good as ever. But after so many years, the characters just can't have the same impact they once had.
showing The Simpsons truly can predict everything, even itself. So, this is where we're going to talk about, like, just other 90s examples in general. Often when you talk about fandom in, like, 90s cartoons, they are often represented by stereotypes of, like, what, like, fanboys were. So whether we have Comic Book Guy or, this charming fellow from the Animaniacs episode, please, please, please get a Life Foundation. However, the reason I wanted to just pinpoint this guy in particular is because we are already seeing something moving towards more specific, as he is actually, a fan of Animaniacs and not some kind of stand-in that represents the show. Which brings us to... everyone loves this episode. Rocknaldo was part of Steven Universe Season 4. It aired on February 24th, 2017, was written by Hilary Florido and Jesse Zook, and directed by Kat Morris. Now, we do need to talk about what Ronaldo in general represents, because he is perhaps the most contentious element of Steven Universe, because he is obsessive, overbearing, and he is a joke character. The whole idea of him in Season 1 was he would spoil major twists in the series, and no one took him seriously.
They're here to hollow out the Earth! It's part of the Great Diamond Authority! They'll take on any form! You can read all about it on my blog!
At any point, he could have said, Rose is pink, and we would have all gone, sure, buddy, yeah. But the thing about Ronaldo is he is self-deprecating humor on the part of the writers, who are kind of making fun of their own connection to fandom. Which is why I've never really hated him as much as everyone else has. But in this episode, after Steven challenges Ronaldo on some misinformation he was spreading, well, trying to, about the crystal gems,
they're adding mind-controlling minerals to our water supply. They hate men?
He decides to quit his blog and join the team. Sure, despite them all entertaining this at first, mainly out of appreciation that someone's actually interested in them for once, Ronaldo quickly overstays his welcome, especially since he's a narcissistic man-child with a superiority complex. This all builds until Steven reaches his limit and snaps at him, at which point he collapses after staying awake for the entire week, and they return him home. A few weeks later, Steven runs into Ronaldo, who has actually done some self-reflection and has found his own way to try and help the gems. And that's the last Ronaldo episode in the entire series. Why am I talking about this episode in a discussion about cartoons calling out their fandoms? What part of this episode is meant to directly speak to the audience? Well, it's this scene. Steven has hit his absolute limit with Ronaldo and finally calls him out and says,
Who are you to tell anyone how to be a crystal gem? You're just a guy with a blog!
But what is actually happening in this scene? Ronaldo is questioning if Steven is upholding what it means to be a crystal gem, when he himself has no understanding of what that even is. Sound familiar? Kinda like how certain corners of the fandom would pick apart every action made by the characters, Pearl, and act as though they had a better grasp on the gems than the people who created them, which went far beyond I disagree with some of these creative decisions and went into they are writing these characters wrong, or that the show is about the diamonds and anything not involving them isn't important. How people got twisted in knots over a kids show promoting empathy and understanding, which is what this episode directly calls out.
We're all different, but we love and accept each other. That's what crystal gems do.
In a way, it's kind of Steven fighting back against those corners of the discussion. But let's move on to something a little less heavy. The shippening. I'm trying to maintain my voice because if anyone was at the Foxbox panel last night, you know why. The The Shippening from the Amazing World of Gumball aired on April 20th, 2018. It was written by Ben Belkay, Joe Markham, James Hamilton, John Perkis, Tom Nehan, and Joe Parham. So, what's going on? Something strange is happening in Elmore, even more so than usual. Characters are suddenly entering new relationships with each other seemingly at random, plunging the town into utter chaos. Gumball and Darwin try to continue about their day, but as the world around them becomes progressively more incomprehensible, they decide to get to the bottom of this. This has all been the work of Sarah, who obtained a notebook from The Awesome Store, which is like a van in this world that sells these incredibly cursed magical artifacts, that makes anything she writes into it a reality. Though, not being aware of this, she has filled it with her various fanfiction about the residents of Elmore. And remember how earlier I said that in the 90s, most, fandoms were depicted by, either you had the pedantic nerd, or the other example, which is the only time fanfiction would be referenced, the main character's creepy stalker. And Sarah does kind of fit that bill, which is why a lot of people don't like her and her episodes, including this one. And while I can see that, especially since the show constantly oscillates between she's creepy but harmless to she's a legitimate danger to everyone around her, sometimes in the same episode, because it's Gumball and it's so exaggerated, I've just never really had a problem with her. So how does this all end? The trio is able to put things right and save the day while also avoiding getting arrested because, after all, it was only fanfiction. I know we're here to talk about the representation of fandom culture, but this episode has a rather poor reputation because of its subject matter. However, it is one of my favourites because of the way it takes all of Sarah's prose literally, which leads to many outstanding visual gags.
And there was something intoxicating in the air. It was love. Did it hurt? Ellen said, the gentle light glistening on his chiseled features. Without further ado, they kissed, the waves of their love sweeping away everything around them.
Larry said we can't see each other anymore.
Principal Brown and Jackie Wilson broke up. Scratch that. They get back together.
Hot Dog Guy and Claire looked at each other with tears in their eyes. We need space, said Claire. I agree, he replied.
Well, let's talk about that scene. This sequence starts with Gumball and Darwin exiting the mall and running into crudely drawn OCs heavily based on the brothers named Zachariah Lopez Kirby and his girlfriend Bexy. Catchphrase, this bird is out of control! And they introduce themselves by listing off a bunch of their likes and dislikes instead of their actual personality, as if this is some sort of DeviantArt OC introduction.
I have a hyper mood and I like paragliding and ducks. I hate arguments and itchy hats.
Not to mention Bexy being Zachariah's girlfriend, potentially foreshadowing the events that are about to unfold. After, of course, Darwin and Gumball stumble across fan art of an older Gumball and Carrie as Darwin rightfully crashes out over this. Now, that is absolutely a light-hearted jab at non-canon shipping and just how out there fan pairings can be. I'm fairly sure at this point the most Gumball and Claire interacted outside of Darwin was that episode where she keeps possessing Gumball to go binge eating. Yeah, this show is weird. You could say wonderfully weird. And then, well, the pair spot a wedding occurring between human versions of the characters, with Darwin marrying Gumball, who has been gender swapped, which is the only part of this scenario Gumball takes issue with because he thought he was the one wearing the pants in this relationship. And I appreciate that this episode does feature a lot of gay and lesbian couples, and they are not treated as any more outlandish than the heteronormative pairings. Not this though, not this. But is this what you would call a positive depiction of fandom? I'm doubtful. I don't think you can consider any aspect of fan culture being represented by Sarah as glowing. Thank you. The episode really does focus on how forced and unnatural a lot of these ships are, but I do think ultimately it comes down on the side of it's fun and harmless as long as you don't take it too seriously. Unfortunately, a lot of people miss that part. Now, this is one of the most fun episodes I saw. The Bubble Bass Review Show. So, this aired on July 24th, 2023. It is the most modern episode that we will be covering today. And it was written by Dave Tennant, Andy Gonzalez, and Mix Perez. This was the first half of the season 1 finale to the Patrick Star Show, I believe? Yes. Let's recap the plot. This concludes my recap of the plot. This episode is framed as an online video of Bubble Bass reviewing the Patrick Star Show. And by reviewing, I mean he throws a fit over minor animation errors and just in general is pretty toxic like we'd expect from this guy. It's such a hyper-specific kind of parody that only this show and its lack of network restrictions could have done. And it's one of my personal favourites as a person who liked cartoons on the internet in the early 2010s. A lot of people immediately pointed to this episode being one huge reference to Doug Walker and the Nostalgia Critic, because Bubble Bass wears a very similar outfit for the first minute of that episode. I don't deny the costume was intentional, but I think it was more about evoking an image of an angry internet reviewer in general. Instead, I've always read this as more of an allusion to pedantic early 2010s cartoon YouTubers, including one in particular. The way Bubble Bass flips his lid over inconsequential details and veers off on these tangents and has created these catchphrases for himself, and how he uses his opinion of the show to launch a personal attack on the people that made it. Now, I won't be naming the name of this creator, because I'm not sure anything I just said could be considered slander, so their identity is just going to have to remain mysterious.
Oh no.
Alright, stand up, where is it?
I'm sorry.
Taking that into account, this episode really does kind of feel like payback to some degree. Because if there's any cartoon staff that deserves to be let off a bit of steam and throw some things back at the community, it's the SpongeBob crew. Because the treatment they received in that era was abysmal. And even at 14, I thought people were taking this way too far. Fun fact, my first ever tweet was a letter I wrote to Paul Tibbett, where I basically said, I can't imagine how stressful this position must be and that I still adored the show and believed he was doing a great job. Because I just felt so bad for him and all the stuff he and the other writers had to deal with back then. And then the show got good again and all those channels immediately stopped covering it and moved on to Teen Titans Go. Remember when I said there was another Simpsons episode in this presentation? Lisa the Boy Scout aired in early 2022 as part of the show's 34th season. We went from season 8 to season 34. Written by Dan Greeny and Lonnie Steele Sotstand, it's interesting putting this episode next to the Itchy and Scratchy and Poochie show and seeing how not only the conversation surrounding The Simpsons has evolved, but how the show is kind of now an active participant in those discussions. The series has been on for so long that it is able to comment on its own legacy and place within history. Sure, sometimes that results in nothing more than acknowledging the hedge meme exists. But other times, it can create something so introspective, like the Treehouse of Horror segment, A Simpsons World, or the season 36 premiere, Bart's Birthday, and this. A generic Simpsons episode is interrupted by a pair of hackers who claim to have access to unseen material so awful that it would destroy the entire show. What follows is a bunch of out-of-context scenes meant to shock or disturb the audience, including several that are actually clips from infamously hated episodes. However, Disney refuses to pay the ransom as the two hackers slowly fall in love while they continue to play the forbidden clips. The FBI track them down, but the pair escape, having realised that nothing they did actually hurt The Simpsons because no one cares anymore. It's a decently funny ending, with one of the agents telling the hackers that the only people who still watch The Simpsons are football fans who fell asleep and didn't turn the TV on. The episode is, in its own way, a response to most of the discourse that has ever surrounded the show, and it's quite impressive for what it is. This entire episode is a direct response to this prevalent sentiment the audience has had that any single scene or episode of The Simpsons has the power to ruin the entire show, especially regarding one infamous moment. The Principal and the Pauper spent about a decade being considered the episode that broke The Simpsons, with how the narrative it built was around a twist that completely changes the way we see one of the show's most important side characters. Though it has been re-evaluated in recent years, as that anger was redirected to more deserving targets. But this episode is essentially revisiting that entire controversy. So much of it is essentially trying to The Principal and the Pauper as many iconic side characters as possible, with these jarring plot twists that, in the context of the episode, are supposed to ruin the show. It really explores how ridiculous that idea is, that a single moment in hundreds of episodes would ever have the power to bring this institution of television to its knees. To a certain degree, it is rage bait, and it worked. I saw people unironically sharing the Martin clip out of context, saying The Simpsons has sunk to a new low. And as I have stressed, The Simpsons is in such a unique place. No other show out there has the kind of legacy that would allow them to explore these ideas and hold up a mirror to their audience. Because the episode also pokes fun at the idea of the show predicting the future, and of course the fan theory that Homer has actually been in a coma ever since the season 2 episode Bart the Daredevil. The show has been on the air forever, and has watched the world change around them. So let them have a little fun and do this kind of stuff that no other animated series can do. Because these experiments, to me, fully justifies why the show is still around. But now, let's get serious. Because there is one episode that was the inspiration for why I wanted to make that original video that later became this panel. My Little Pony Friendship is Magic. So, this episode is titled Fame and Misfortune. It was aired as part of the show's 7th season. It aired on February 9th, 1990.
It was at this moment that he knew. He f***ed up.
Oh, 1997. Okay.
They were ahead of the time.
Yeah, they were. Okay, that was. Oof, yeah, that's definitely an insert text here moment.
Implication will get you.
What makes a good finale? Ooh.
Text.
So it was written by M.A. Larson, directed by Denny Liu, Jim Miller, and Mike Meyer. Has anyone here, obviously everyone's familiar with My Little Pony Friendship is Magic, but is anyone familiar with My Little Pony Friendship is Magic?
I got 3 seasons in.
Okay, so I feel like we need a little crash course on the relationship between this show and its fandom, because it is one of the most complex and interesting you could ever find. For its first few years, MLP was very much a series intended for young girls. The writing was solid and it took the characters seriously, which is why older viewers were drawn to it, but the target demographic was always at the center. However, around season 4, this slowly began to change, as it became clear the show had begun catering to more of its older audience, which really transformed it. Episodes became more emotionally complex, there was a greater emphasis on action, and focus was put on showing how the characters were moving forward in their lives. Rarity expands her business and becomes a successful fashion designer. Rainbow Dash achieves her life goal of becoming a Wonderbolt, but then has to figure out what comes next. It's all very interesting and stuff that you wouldn't have gotten in the show's first 3 seasons. And I've always believed that this shift was intentional on the part of the show staff. Because these kind of cartoons are not meant to have a long shelf life, besides the obvious exceptions like PBS shows. Because after a few years, the target audience is expected to grow out of it and move on, at which point another show will come along to take its place. So, what the writers of MLP were left with was a show at the height of its popularity, but the kids it was originally aimed at were starting to leave. If it was going to continue, it would need to shift its focus, and that's exactly what it did. Not losing its accessibility to children, but gearing more towards the older fans who were in it for the long haul. It's difficult to deny that the fandom didn't have a huge influence over the last few seasons, with episodes like Slice of Life, which canonized many of the names and personalities fans had created for the various background characters in celebration of the show's 100th episode. Season 7, in particular, is jam-packed with ideas and episode concepts that fans had been desperately wanting for years by that point. Episodes that brought more dimension to Princess Celestia, episodes that gave us more insight into the main characters' upbringings, including a bittersweet flashback centered on Applejack's parents, and a season-long story arc that digs deeper into the lore of this world while introducing characters that had been teased by the show from the very beginning. But with the show staff closely following the fandom, they also saw a lot of the petty arguments over inconsequential details and all of the major dramas that went down. Which brings us to Fame and Misfortune. After remembering the journal they kept during Season 4, Twilight and her friends decide to publish it in the hopes that their lessons will be able to help others. And this was something that was a major theme of the show towards the very end, so seasons 7, 8, and 9. The main characters wanting to pass on their knowledge and experience to others to help them on their journeys. In fact, in the very next season, they open a school for that exact purpose. However, they are blindsided when the journal becomes exceedingly popular, as ponies are now travelling to the town just to see them. But they are not focused on the actual content of the book, and instead begin harassing the main six. Oh, by the way, the main six characters are called the main six, like Horsemate. It's a very funny joke. So they begin harassing the main six over petty grievances with how they've been portrayed. It soon becomes clear that many of these ponies have a twisted and poor reading of the text, which has translated to how they view the main six. Pinkie Pie is seen as only the funny one, to a point where they start laughing at anything she says, even when she's being entirely sincere.
Classic Pinkie. Oh, she's even funnier in real life.
You've known me for years!
With all this going on, though, the episode still manages to strike a nice balance between its commentary and comedy. Since this is a late season episode, there is a treasure trove of great facial expressions. And that brings us to the moment where it dawned on me what this episode is trying to do. For pretty much the entire show, Fluttershy had been a very contentious character. She was either one of your favourites, or you quickly became annoyed by her. And one of the big criticisms thrown at her character was that her stories were all very similar, in that a lot of her lessons were about her finding self-confidence, which people boiled down to she learns the same thing over and over again. But you know, Fluttershy has severe social anxiety, which takes a lot of time and work to truly overcome. You take it one step at a time, which is exactly what she does. It was a lot of incremental growth over several years as you saw her get better at navigating all these challenges. And this is something the episode explicitly calls out, as she is confronted over this exact issue as a way of having Fluttershy essentially standing up to her detractors, advocating for herself to demonstrate how much she actually has grown.
Listen up! I am more assertive. And yes, it took me a while to get there. But can you honestly say that you could learn something one time and completely change who you are? I didn't think so.
But even when she does assert herself, the ponies then turn on her for being different than how she was in the book.
Wow. You're way different from the Fluttershy in the book. I don't know how I feel about that.
These ponies are not looking for answers, like they claim. They're looking to get mad even when they are given the very thing they asked for. Everyone retreats to the castle, where they are soon surrounded as Twilight tries to get through to the crowd, but this doesn't go well, as her usual friendship speech is interrupted when one of them insists that her character would have been more interesting if she stayed the same short-tempered recluse she was in the pilot.
I read this journal cover to cover, and I have to say, your character would have been much more interesting if she'd stayed in Canterlot.
My character?
Now, I don't think this was an actual criticism people had, but it does speak to just straight up not understanding the show, with how they point out how you have to suspend your disbelief to buy that these incredibly different ponies could be such good friends, even with often conflicting personalities. But it's supposed to be idealistic. Like, that's what the show is. It's teaching you how to be a better friend. And if they were truly compatible 100% of the time, the show would have no conflict, and we would have missed out on some of its greatest episodes. But this comment is meant to spark something else. The crowd is once again whipped up into a frenzy with an elderly pony piping up just to say,
Twilight was better before she got wings.
Referencing perhaps the biggest row the fandom ever had following Twilight's ascension to royal status at the end of Season 3, which many feared would spell certain doom for the show, before it went on for 6 more seasons. So far, it seems like this has been a fairly glowing endorsement of the episode. I agree with a lot of its rebuttals, but I wouldn't say I like it all that much in execution. I just find the general concept interesting and respect that they actually took it this far. And that mainly comes down to the episode not actually having anything to say outside of defending creative decisions the show has made. And because of that, the messaging is confusing and even nonsensical. Twilight saying the purpose of the book isn't for marketing rings a little hollow when you remember this show only exists to sell toys. And when Twilight goes up to the angry mob, she's insisting that they are forgetting that they are real ponies and that the entries in the journal are things that actually happened. I could see this kind of being a metaphor for the writers and how people often forget real humans are making these shows. But this line really should have been cut because it makes no sense. I also think, potentially, the episode is attempting to point out the ridiculous scrutiny audiences place on female or femme-presenting characters in fiction, with bad faith discussions that take a character's intentional flaws that they are working on and use them as a mark against the series. Not to bring it up again, but like 60% of the criticism against Steven Universe. But if that's what it wants to do, it's doing a really bad job. So then there is the episode's conclusion, in that there really isn't much of one. Twilight and her friends sing this great song about how it's okay to have flaws because that just means you're still working to better yourself, as the characters all sing about the main things that they have struggled with over the series. Rarity's stuck-up attitude, Applejack's people-pleasing tendencies, Rainbow Dash's ego, Fluttershy's, shyness, Pinkie Pie's tendency to not understand when to take a step back, and Twilight's perfectionism. However, this accomplishes nothing, as the moment the song is over, the crowd resumes their various arguments over who is the best pony.
Oh my god. What did you say about Applejack again?
Oh, Applejack is a people-pleaser. They all resume their various arguments over who is the best pony, even though we all know it's Pinkie Pie. The episode ends with Twilight's pupil, Starlight, who is an amazing character, and I will fight anyone who disagrees. She is one of the best things they added in the final seasons. She brings out 2 fillies who thank the main 6 as reading the journal has helped strengthen their friendship, and that is enough for the girls to believe that everything else they've been through today was worth it. Upon the episode's release, there was a lot of debate surrounding this ending, and whether or not it displayed a contempt for the older fans by having these characters who represent the show's original audience coming in and being the only ones using the book for its intended purpose. And I don't think that was the intent behind this. I think it's very much saying the people who are meant to get it will get it. They're not saying adults shouldn't be watching the show. It's more about how certain corners of fandom can miss the forest for the trees. And just to point out, there are young ponies in this episode on the side of the mob. So it's not like these are the only 2 exceptions. The ponies in this episode get so bogged down by the little details and questioning how all the main 6 are portrayed that they miss the point of the book. It's a guide on not only being a better friend, but also improving yourself. And you're never too old for that. And here is the finished scale. if y'all can think of any other episodes that do something similar, because I know there is way more than this. One that I didn't get around to covering was, I believe, it's the Adventure Time episode. I believe it's called All the Little People. Yes. So, what is the point of any of this? We should be a lot more careful about the things we say and do in fandom spaces, because the chances of people who make that thing seeing it are much higher than you would think. Mainly due to how consolidated the internet has become over the last 20 years. And when I say this, I am speaking from personal experience. I have made videos that have been later found by people who worked on what I've talked about, and if I knew that was going to happen, there are some things that I would have either not said or would have worded very differently. Going on an exaggerated and purposefully over-the-top rant about how there is a lot of weird ableist undertones in the first few episodes of the Disney series Teacher's Pet is not something I would have done had I been cursed by Apollo and knew that a few years later the creator of the show would watch that video. Ever since then, I am very careful about what I say and do on my channel because there is no telling who is going to find it. And that's all I have to say. Which means we are moved on to the Q&A portion, and anyone who wants to come up and ask a question gets to take home a My Little Pony figure. Also, if you didn't know who I was before, and you're interested in checking out some of my stuff, but need a good idea where to start, I've created a handy-dandy flow quiz that will tell you exactly which of my videos to watch on the long ride back home. Alright, so let's start with the questions. Who are you? Who are you, stranger?
Hi, I'm Keeks, your friend.
Yeah.
So I haven't actually seen that My Little Pony episode, but based on your description and the fillies coming in at the end, my first reaction was, I wonder if this is the creators saying that, like, because there are fans of My Little Pony who watch it and get what we're doing and don't lash out at us, represented by the fillies, everything is worth it for us to be working on the show, even though this criticism is there. So, as a fan of My Little Pony, do you think that could be like a valid read of that scene as well?
I absolutely think that. I do, because obviously it's like, it's just saying, like, you're never too old to try and be a better person. It's like, you know, I do think it's like, if you are looking at the main six as a stand-in for the writers, I definitely think that is like the lead of the episode to have. That they are saying, look, like, you know, we know we've ragged on you guys, but it's like we acknowledge that overall we are doing good and we are a positive impact on your lives, so we're going to keep doing what we're doing.
Cool, thanks.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hello.
Okay, I mainly had a question about one of the shows that was up on the, it was like least to most, something like that.
Yeah.
What was the show all the way on the left?
Big Hero 6.
Okay, I figured
Yeah.
it was Big Hero 6.
Oh, yeah, that was the first episode I talked about. We went in order, so it's like it got more severe as it went
What
on.
season did that one come out in?
That's episode 17 of season 1.
Okay, I didn't. Okay, that's why I didn't know.
Jake,
Hey.
question and comment. Quick question.
Yes.
What you're drinking looks enticing. Can you showcase it to everybody just
Oh
so
my
they know
god,
that
yes,
what you're
yes.
drinking?
This is smart water. It helps me get through this because usually I am a dum-dum.
Okay, good. I just want to make sure that everyone saw the label.
Yes.
And just a quick comment. I was going to mention something else, but something else popped up in my mind. I do want to give a quick shout out to a show called Batman the Brave and the Bold. Specifically the episodes where a character called Batmite appears, voiced by the late great Paul Rubens. Basically, every episode he's in, it's always just a call out specifically to the audience. It literally is just like at points like Animaniacs did, and I love it. The finale itself is kind of just like one big call out itself, but it's also like one of the best episodes of the show. If you haven't seen that show, I definitely recommend it. It is a fantastic. It's actually my favorite animated iteration of Batman in terms of show form.
Oh, yeah. Take a
You're good, brother. You're good.
Is it still recording?
Yeah, you're good.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Here's the white one.
Thanks, man.
Hey.
Yeah, I was saying, yeah, speaking of the Patrick Star show, how did you feel about that? Like when they revealed like Bubble Bath was just like dressed in Star Trek. I was pretty surprised, like wow.
It was a shock. It was a shock. But I mean, well, it would have been a shock had I not known that going in, because the second that episode aired, a bunch of people, like, didn't the Nostalgia Critic actually make a response video to that?
Yes.
like, looking at the content Bubble Bath produces, like, the style and tone of it, there are, like, very little similarities, because, you know, growing up in the early 2000s, I was a big, like, Watch and the Nostalgia critic back then.
Hey, yo, it's Vedanta Cat. So, you know, you bringing up episodes of Ronaldo actually made me think about something I've been thinking about the last few days, ever since the series finales of The Boys, and now I'm wondering, what do you think is the difference between fan entitlement, in which fans think they know the show and characters better than the actual creators, and also just plain on bad writing?
I think it comes down to, like, logical consistency. So it's like, you know, bringing up Steven Universe as an example, it's like looking at Pearl. All her actions, you can see the reasoning behind them. You can justify everything she does, even like, you know, the more extreme stuff. And it's like, it does come down to having that internal logic where it's like, does this make sense for the character, or is it just there to be shocking? It's like, are the characters being written around the story, or is the story being written around the characters? Because, like, there are so many shows that will bend, like, the characterization to make a story work, even though I don't personally think that's a good idea, but...
Yeah, hence why, like, sometimes fans outrage are actually justified.
Hi.
What will happen if Rainbow Dash loses all of her races?
Yes. If Rainbow Dash loses all her races, she would train really hard, and, like, she would go right back out there, and it's like, you know, winning isn't important. What's important is having fun, and I think, like, maybe Fluttershy would probably help her realize that. Would you like a pony?
So if Gummy were a pony, what would his favorite snack be?
Oh, like Gummy Pinkie Pie's alligator?
Yes.
I mean, he lives with Pinkie Pie, so it's like I've got to assume it would be something like sweet. It's like it's got to be like cupcakes or something. What? Yeah. Maybe like cupcakes are like a bit of a kick to them, I'd say. Yeah.
I'm trying to remember my question because I 100% did come up here for the toys. I'll be honest. But no,
that's the ploy. That's how I get questions.
But no, one question I had is that some shows will have a super fan sort of episode where it's this fan that is following around like Incredible Style sort of, following around the main character, the main cast, and
I didn't talk about Irving from Phineas and Ferb, but it's like he's up there.
Because I do feel like that is also a way that the show interacts with its fans. It's like, hey, I understand you really like this thing, but you need to calm down.
Yeah.
And also, I do love what you said about, or I do love kind of the message they were trying to send with My Little Pony is that the point of the show is that kids find it helpful and entertaining, which is honestly that. I feel like there is a lot of that happens where the main point gets missed over every single little detail. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Can I also get...
Yeah, of course. Okay, yeah. We are past the hour mark, so it's like, let's just quickly, like, run through these last few questions. Hi.
So, you talked about how the shows will call out, like, some fan theories.
Yeah.
But there's one that does it so badly that everybody kind of knows this kind of infamous for.
Yeah.
So, Teen Titans Go.
Yeah,
which does it the worst. Like, what's your opinion on when shows do it like Teen Titans Go, where they just like every week it's like them calling out the fans, and it just becomes so repetitive
it's lazy. It's like it's purposeful rage bait. It's like I said. It's like the thing is when I said it's like when SpongeBob got good again, everyone moved on to Teen Titans Go. It's just because that show like wants you to talk about it. That's kind of like And it's like, as a show on its own, it's like, I think it's fine. I've not seen, like, a lot of it. I liked the movie. But no, I like, just straight up saying, like, calling out fan theories and stuff without any real point to it. That's just, like, reeks of, like, insecurity, I'd say. Hi.
Hello. What is your favorite background character shit from Other Ponies?
Oh, it's got an I can't decide between Lyra and Bon Bon, but I mean, obviously they're canon in the finale. But I think I'm gonna go with Vinyl and Octavia. I think I just like the opposites attract of that really gets me.
Honestly, same.
Yeah. Just to pass it on to the next person.
So I have a few recommendations
Yeah?
of episodes. Piggybacking off of the person who brought up Teen Titans Go.
Thank you.
That reminded me of an episode where they literally brought up the original Teen Titans
Yes,
run.
and they watch it, don't they?
Yes.
Yes.
And in universe, they had it so that Control Freak reset the universe. But piggybacking off of that, in the original Teen Titans, there's also an episode where they have a Mr. Mitzi Spitlick type character that is Robin focused.
Yeah.
And is just a huge fan of Robin.
Yeah.
And I think that might be some commentary on the fans.
It's on the list. It's on the list.
And another honorable mention from comics.
Yeah.
Is that I remembered Superboy Prime, which I feel definitely deserves a spot here, because it was literally an allegory for toxic fans.
Yeah.
Where it was a person who got basically isekai'd into the DC universe, who was a fan of DC Comics. But he was a fan of like 10 years ago and was put into present day DC and was given the powers of Superman. And then proceeded to basically have a temper tantrum at all the changes that happened and literally broke the universe with how hard he punched it at times.
That honestly sounds like one of those creative ways you could do that. That sounds so interesting.
Like, for instance, in this continuity, that's how Jason Todd gets revived. Is that Superboy Prime just punches the universe?
I think I watched this channel called Overly Sarcastic Productions. I'm fairly sure they've talked about that at some point. Hey.
Joe on the panel. How many big script pages did you use?
Well, these are more notes. Last year I had like a full script, and this year I tried to be a little more breezy with it. I think there's like 25 here.
Okay.
Just because it's in bold, so it's very big, so that I can read it.
Nice. Okay, that was my only question. Good job.
How long did it take you to prepare all that?
I'm gonna be honest. Like the week before I came here, my parents were away and I was staying looking after my dog, and he refused to go to sleep. So I literally stayed up all night just doing this.
Good job on the panel.
Thank you. All right, so yeah, that's it. Thank you all so much for coming. Thank you. Have a safe journey home, and hopefully I'll see you again next year.